Kevin De Bruyne is long gone, and for the first time in almost a decade, Manchester City had a problem. Not a goals problem, not a possession problem, a creativity problem. Because replacing goals is difficult, replacing assists is difficult, but replacing Kevin De Bruyne? That might be impossible. The player who spent nearly 10 years creating chances nobody else could even see. The player who turned impossible passes into normal football. The player who became the heartbeat of Manchester City's greatest era. You don't replace that. You survive it. Unless Pep Guardiola thinks he's found the answer. And that's where this story begins. Not with Manchester City, not with Pep Guardiola, but with a 16-year-old kid in Lyon who looked like he was playing a completely different sport from everyone else around him. His name was Rayan Cherki, and for a while, French football thought he would become the next global superstar. Not because people hoped he would, because they genuinely believed he would. At 16 years old, Cherki became the youngest goal scorer in Lyon history. Months later, he became the youngest player ever to appear in a Champions League semi-final. Every touch looked different. Every dribble looked different. Every pass looked different. Left foot, right foot, it didn't matter, because Rayan Cherki could do things most players wouldn't even attempt. The scary part? They usually worked. And suddenly, France had another wonder kid, another future superstar, another player destined to dominate football. At least that's what everyone thought, because football has a funny way of punishing talent, especially when that talent arrives too early. While players like Jude Bellingham were becoming leaders, while Jamal Musiala was becoming world-class, while Florian Wirtz was becoming the future of Germany, Rayan Cherki was stuck. Not because he wasn't talented enough, because some people thought he was too talented, too much flair, too many touches, too many tricks, too much freedom. Managers kept seeing the same problem. The ability was unbelievable, the consistency wasn't. One coach questioned his decision-making, another questioned his discipline, another questioned his work rate. At one point, it genuinely felt like every manager who worked with Cherki saw two completely different players, the genius and the frustration. Because when Cherki had the ball, he looked like one of the most gifted players in Europe. But football isn't played only with the ball, and that became the biggest question surrounding his career. Not whether he was talented, whether he could actually become elite, because there's a difference, a massive difference. Football history is full of gifted players, but greatness? Greatness demands structure, and for years, Cherki looked like a player caught between freedom and discipline. Too creative for rigid systems, too chaotic for tactical coaches, too unpredictable for managers who wanted control. And eventually, something dangerous started happening. People stopped talking about what he could become and started talking about what he failed to become. The Wonder Kid label slowly became a burden. Every season that passed created new questions. Why hasn't he exploded yet? Why isn't he dominating League One? Why isn't he becoming France's next superstar? Why does the talent look bigger than the output? And then something changed. Because during the 2024-25 season, Cherki finally started putting everything together. The creativity was still there, the dribbling was still ridiculous, but now the numbers were arriving too. Goals, assists, consistency. Suddenly, defenders couldn't live with him. Suddenly, coaches couldn't ignore him. Suddenly, Europe started paying attention again. Cherki finished the season with 12 goals and 20 assists in all competitions. He led the Europa League in assists. He became League One's top assist provider and won the league's Best Dribbler award. The player many people thought had stalled was finally arriving. And that's when Pep Guardiola entered the story. Because while everyone else was watching the highlights, Pep was looking at something deeper. Control, vision, creativity, decision-making in tight spaces, the ability to create chances from absolutely nothing, the things that cannot be taught. And according to people around Manchester City, Pep loved what he saw. Because here's the truth, Rayan Cherki doesn't play like most modern footballers. Modern football is structured, systematic, organized. Everything is coached, everything is rehearsed. Cherki looks like he's improvising, like he's solving football problems in real time. And those players are becoming rare, very rare. That's why Guardiola wanted him. Not because he wanted another winger, not because he wanted another dribbler, because Manchester City weren't just losing a player, they were losing an era. Kevin De Bruyne wasn't simply City's best midfielder, he was the solution. Whenever the system broke down, whenever possession wasn't enough, whenever the game became chaotic, City looked towards De Bruyne, and somehow, he always had an answer. A pass nobody else saw, A cross nobody else attempted, a moment nobody else could create. For nearly a decade, he was Manchester City's emergency exit, the player who could unlock a defense with one touch, the player who could change a match with one decision. And players like that don't come around very often. In fact, football spends years searching for them. That's why replacing Kevin De Bruyne isn't really possible. You don't replace players like that. You adapt, you evolve, you find a new way. And that's exactly what Pep Guardiola has spent his entire career doing. Because for years, Manchester City solved football through control. Control the ball, control the tempo, control the spaces, control the game. But football doesn't always allow control. Sometimes games become messy, sometimes systems stop working, sometimes the perfect plan falls apart. And in those moments, you need something different. You need imagination. You need unpredictability. You need chaos. The good kind of chaos. The kind that makes defenders panic. The kind that breaks tactical structures. The kind that wins football matches. That's where Rayan Cherki enters the story. Because Cherki doesn't play like most modern footballers. Most players follow patterns. Cherki creates them. Most players see passes. Cherki invents them. Most players wait for space. Cherki creates it. And that's exactly why Pep Guardiola became interested. Not because Cherki is perfect, because he isn't. Not because he's complete, because he isn't. Not because he's already world-class, because he isn't. What Pep sees is something much rarer: potential. The type of potential that can't be manufactured. The type of potential that coaches dream about. Because certain things in football simply cannot be taught. You cannot teach imagination. You cannot teach instinct. You cannot teach genius. You cannot teach the ability to make an entire stadium rise to its feet from a single touch of the ball. Rayan Cherki already has those things. The difficult part comes next: turning talent into greatness. Because football has seen players like Cherki before. Players with endless ability, endless potential, endless hype. Wonder kids who looked destined for greatness. Not all of them made it. Some got comfortable, some lost confidence, some never found the right environment, and some never found the right manager. That's why Manchester City matters. That's why Pep Guardiola matters. Because if football has taught us anything over the last 20 years, it's that Guardiola sees things before everyone else does. He saw a defensive midfielder in Sergio Busquets. He saw a false nine in Lionel Messi. He saw a midfielder in Philipp Lahm. He saw a world-class player in Phil Foden years before the rest of England did. Again and again. The story is always the same. Pep identifies something. The football world doubts it. And eventually, Pep turns out to be right. And now, he's betting on Rayan Cherki. Not just as another signing, not just as another winger, but as a player capable of carrying Manchester City into the next era. An era without Kevin De Bruyne. An era with new ideas, new solutions, new stars. Maybe Rayan Cherki was never a failed wonder kid. Maybe he was simply born too early, too talented to fit into ordinary systems, too creative to be fully understood. Maybe he was always waiting for the one manager capable of seeing the complete picture. Because talent gets you noticed, but the right manager changes your career. And if Pep Guardiola is right one more time, Manchester City haven't just found Kevin De Bruyne's replacement. They may have found football's next great genius. And with Rayan Cherki beginning to show why Pep believed in him, and Enzo Maresca preparing to take over, Manchester City's next era might still belong to Guardiola's ideas. And if Pep Guardiola really turned Rayan Cherki into a superstar, it won't be the first time he's changed football forever. To understand why, check out this video right here.